All right, we're going to look at community mobilization, how to get a community to basically come together and take action inside their community to affect some sort of change towards that wellness spectrum of trying to improve life in their general community. To do this, what we're going to do is look at the community in Santa Ana, California. This was a program based off a program put on by Bill Mayer called the Santa Ana Health Crusade. Video file there, and we're going to use what that video said with some other research to kind of back up and look at how you can mobilize a community to affect some sort of change in their community. So first and foremost, they always do this community needs map. We look at what the community has and what it doesn't have more specifically when doing this needs mapping. Some of the problems that's found in Santa Ana, there's a lot of gangs, there's poverty, limited parks and open spaces, higher crime rate. The video did talk about food deserts. There are a lot of convenience stores, but not a lot of grocery stores. They have a very high rate of diabetes. Along with that, they see increased morbidity and mortality, where you have people going blind, maybe getting amputated at that relatively young age. And then they also have a lot of blight in their community, empty buildings, evicted or foreclosed buildings that have problems with vandalization, empty lots that are kind of that ice or that blight that we've been hearing about recently. And then the last one, one of the needs they have a lot of domestic abuse and domestic violence issues going on inside their community. These are all ways to, or things that need to be improved inside their community. Usually this is where assessments for wellness kind of ends, looking at what's wrong with a community. Our textbook very much point out, though, that one of the things we should also do is look at the assets or stuff we can draw from the community and surrounding areas to try and improve the community. So what resources are there? So we do another type of mapping called the community asset mapping. There are usually three different areas. There's that innermost, what is available right away. That outer next layer is what we talk about with a little bit of work, what can be brought into the community or can be utilized just outside the community. And then finally, that very outer layer, a lot of times that's funds or maybe resources that should hypothetically be able to help the community but might just be outside that reach, outside their availability. So looking at this specific community in Santa Ana, what we have first in that outermost ring is that city revitalization program. The city came up and said they wanted to revitalize the area, do a lot of improvements and a lot of activities to kind of increase the way of life inside Santa Ana, increase the wellness, and give them some opportunities. The problem is the program seems to have backfired, where there are many lots and places the community have tried to access that have been cut off, put up big fences and no trespassing signs saying that the community members are not allowed to use these. What this has done essentially is taken away a lot of the open spaces they could use, or maybe utilizing of land that they could put maybe a park or a rec center or some sort of community improvement area, because the city's saying that these are those revitalization. So they're kind of keeping these lands barren because the program seems to have stalled out. Going one layer closer, not in that middle again, we have private donors. The video talked about there were a lot of the there was one private donor who donated quite a bit of money once they started getting their community projects rolling. And that could be more people who'd be willing to get on with that initiative to kind of donate funds or other resources to the community. What can the community draw from that core values and assets that they have? First off, they do have the peer-to-peer program. That diabetes program is how they started, which we'll be talking about here. We're going to do a further assessment of that diabetes program, where they had people who have kind of recovered from diabetes help people who are still very much affected by diabetes. They seem to have a very good community connectivity. They really like to come together, help their neighbors, help one another, and kind of get involved in each other's lives. A lot of them know what their neighbor has gone through. If they're able to kind of lend that hand, they're willing to do it. The video did talk about there's a hospital partnership. That's a direct result of that peer-to-peer program, that diabetes program they set up. The hospitals came into these communities, kind of realized they got something special there, and as such, when it came time for the next one, that new community center, they donated a lot of time and resources as a way to show that they are connected, and that could maybe be drawn on for future programs. Again, like I mentioned, the new community center, the video said that is still in progress. They're still trying to build it, although they had a lot of that first steps already completed towards that final goal. Then the community is blessed by having some program pioneers, people who are willing to stand up and take action and really be those advocates for the community and for getting programs off the ground and get them rolling down the road. Those types of people can be utilized upon when they finally want to maybe step back. Those are the ones who will be hopefully training the next generation of people to mobilize the community. So we're going to look at summarizing the steps in community organization and community building. Today we're going to focus in on that one program, that diabetes program that was mentioned in the film. They went in depth about how it started, why they started it, and where they went with it. So we're going to really focus in on that diabetes, that peer-to-peer, where they have people in one community who have recovered from diabetes or are now managing their diabetes, who then go work with other individuals who have yet to been able to control or manage their diabetes. The idea there again is that these aren't strangers coming into their community. They're the neighbors, their peers, their people in that cohort group that can come together and help out individuals who are still affected by that problem. So first, they recognized an issue. They did like that mapping, that needs mapping, where they really looked at what are all the problems and looked at how they're interrelated and how problems maybe right now are kind of out of their reach, and what ones could they actually affect change with. This is where that diabetes, they realize that's a very safe issue. That's an issue that they're able to tackle quite effectively, where other issues like maybe the gangs or domestic violence and abuse is something that's more outside of their reach at the time. So they gain entry into the community. They realize that maybe they're outsiders, although the pioneer leader who finally kind of got this program kicked off had a lot of the same heritage that the people inside the community had, which gave her kind of that leg up. She was able to get into the community, acclimate herself, and be accepted into that community. But it's also with that organizing of people in the community. Instead of using outsiders, maybe bringing in doctors or nurses from the local hospital, they utilize community members. Again, people who have recovered from diabetes that lived inside that community. They don't mind going into those different buildings or apartments and kind of talking to the residents about how they can improve their lives. So they really kind of combine those two steps. They assessed the community, they assessed the readiness. They did see that diabetes was a problem and that they were kind of ready for that to be changed and ready for that to be altered. So they saw that they had a lot of people who were still able to be very productive members of society who no longer could be because they either had amputation or maybe lost their vision. They started to determine their priorities and set goals. Again, they looked at that diabetes specifically. They thought that was a very safe issue. And they started relatively very small, just community organizations, small groups, small therapy sessions. But then each person that they help, they then turn them out on the community, go and help another 10 people, and then it'll keep going from there, building until it became a very big and large scope where they had people almost going door to door trying to help people who were affected by diabetes. The next step there is arrive to a solution and select an intervention strategy. So again, that kind of tied in. They want to do this peer-to-peer, where you actually have people who they've been through there, they've done that, they're part of the community, they've overcome it. They can also be a role model to people who are still affected by it. Implementation of the plan, they implemented their plan. They started off again very, very small, but then built upon it. Where they kept each person that they helped through their program, they then asked them to be that peer, to be that mentor, and go help more people. They evaluated the outcome, and this was actually even done at the hospital, started to take note of their program and realized that even though they had the hospitals had doctors and nurses who were trained educators, trained in healthcare, they had a very low success rate, where this community program that took people who were in comparison less educated, who were not medically trained, who were just, again, they were community members, they were neighbors inside the community, who then were able to go help out other people. They found that the hospital-based program had that much lower success rate, and the hospital even turned to this community-based program to kind of ask them, where can we improve upon our program so that we can get the results you're getting. Maintain those outcomes in the community. This one's kind of that self-fulfilling destiny. Once one person is helped and they can go help out other people inside the community, it keeps toppling on top of each other. Again, repetitive, making that positive feedback loop. Once another person's helped, they go help more people who help more. Again, that exponential growth. On that looping feedback at any point here, if there's a lesson learned, or especially during the evaluation process, we find that we can maybe make adjustments to that top procedures, those top processes that came before. We'll adjust them as needed and then implement that next step again throughout, again, evaluating and monitoring that system, making the program much stronger, affecting that change. So where do we go from here? Where should the community go from here? Is really the question that needs to be asked. They've had programs that have worked, they've seen a lot of success, but this, again, like that planning, isn't a closed loop. Not once you've completed a program is now your efforts to stop. You need to go on. You need to see what problem can you affect next, what behaviors can you change, and continue with the process. The best way to do this is to, again, take that needs assessment and that asset map, kind of put them together and look at where we can team stuff up. The video talked about that after they kind of had their success with the diabetes program. They moved on to other problems like the domestic violence that they have in the community. An issue that I think that they should probably address and probably could start to address, although there's a lot more hurdles, a lot more obstacles, is looking at that gang violence they have where their younger members are joining gangs. There has been a lot of problems associated with gangs, whether that's violence, whether that's engaging in criminal activity. And all that can directly affect the health of that community. But a lot of gangs, you hear these peer-to-peer programs are very effective in helping gang members realize that there are other options. There are places for them to go. So although it's kind of a bigger step, it's a little bit more of a risky step, because sometimes the gang members will not appreciate someone trying to break up their gangs. It is a step that can be done next. They have a lot of experience with the peer-to-peer. They can just adapt their current program to now focus on other aspects. So again, find some youth or some people of the gangs that they can convince. You know, it's okay to not be in a gang. There are other options. There are more productive ways that you can be a part of some sort of unit, some sort of family that does not encourage and engage in violent or criminal activity. So as a representative of the health department, how would I be involved in the community in the future mobilization efforts? Again, is to support what they're already doing. That peer-to-peer program is a very good program. It has shown a lot of results and good effects inside the community. So really encourage that to grow, facilitate that, provide resources as needed. But again, the community at this point is almost that self-sufficient organization where they're doing what works. To go in there and try to change what they're doing drastically won't help the problem at all. It might actually make it worse. Offer them resources, provide evaluation, kind of be that outsider looking in, but then also engage them in their efforts that they're doing, so that hopefully their program that's already working very well can just be manipulated just that little bit to work even better, especially if they're to move into territories like trying to deal with the gangs inside Santa Ana, trying to decrease what's the number of youth joining these gangs and what's going on inside their city. That'd kind of be the direction the health department would go. Again, it's a very strong program they have, so it's not like they have to come in and reinvent the wheel. They're just going to supplement the efforts that are already there.